In today's video, we're going to talk about how we feel after being in Portugal for, is it 6.5 months already?
Something like that.
Yeah. The first thing that we'll talk about is the bureaucracy. Now, we know that Portugal has a bit of a reputation for bureaucracy and things moving slow. However, I will say, in Portugal's credit, it really does depend what you need and where you're living. Because what we found is that because we are living in a smaller town, we found that our local government department or junta have actually been really helpful, and they've not been too busy. I don't think they've had too much pressure. So what I found is when it came to getting my proof of residence, it was actually much smoother than we'd anticipated. And the other thing is in our local town hall, our Camera, they were so helpful when I went in to get my documents sorted. They actually, there was a lady behind the desk who could speak English. She actually escorted me to the right desk. Then she translated on my behalf, and she was really helpful. So in that regard, I think the experience, at least for us getting our proof of residency, has actually been quite positive.
And also when as we see with many people in different Facebook groups and so on, complaining about finances. So that's the tax authority in Portugal, not getting back on emails. You can't in Portugal. You can't just send them an email in English or in pure Portuguese and then expect that you get a credible answer a minute after. Yes, sometimes they get back to emails, but if they don't, there's a list of different options that you can do to resolve it. For example, if you just need to get your NIF number, your tax ID here in Portugal, then there's a really good trick. Initially, it doesn't matter which department you go to, so you can just literally look at a map, find somewhere small, far out, where there's finances. Just look on Google Map, and then go there, because initially it doesn't matter. So you can drive an hour away, out where there's not many people, and when they're not as busy as they are in the capitals. So that is a good trick of how to deal with it. Alternatively, there's a list of different things. You can get a Portuguese person to help you. You can try to call them. Maybe you're lucky enough that someone speaks English. Even if they pick up the phone right now and they don't speak English, try again later. There might be a colleague that are able to at least speak basic English or sometimes fluent English. So there's many different options, and remember, when we come as expats into a country like Portugal, we're essentially guests, so we have to work on how
At their speed.
not at their speed, but we are at the disadvantage that we don't know, we can't speak
The language, yeah.
we can't speak Portuguese, so we
Yeah.
have to act accordingly.
Yeah.
And not everything is being catered for across the country.
Yeah.
And that would be the same with any non-English speaking country.
Definitely. And I'd say one of the fear factors for me actually was, I had very sort of rudimentary Portuguese, but I'm definitely not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. So I felt a little bit intimidated when coming here because I didn't, obviously having been here on holiday, and that's different from when you're actually trying to settle and get your paperwork sorted. So I felt a little bit intimidated by all the processes and all the documents you need and everything else. And one thing that we did is find a virtual PA who's native Portuguese, and how we found it was through a local co-working space. So many of the co-working spaces actually offer virtual assistant services, don't they? And it's actually useful.
There's also sometimes like accounting officers and stuff like that offers different types of virtual assistants, and it's very reasonable priced, even just to buy some hours. And in that way, you really save yourself some time.
And headaches.
Exactly. Because the one thing that we actually, if we should go back on talking about the NIF, prior to relocating here, I did contact someone who said they were relocation experts, and for getting NIF and residencia and all these paperwork, well, I was quoted 5,000 euros for our family, and that essentially was free for us. We were only paying some small fees for the documents, which is far less than 100 euros. So don't rely on relocation experts or sharks. You can do most of the things yourself, just with a little bit of patience and the right attitude. So just jump into it. If we just should go through setting up a bank account here in Portugal. Initially, I was a little bit frustrated with it, but as it happened, it was purely down to that I had the wrong attitude approaching it. So I had first read something about an amazing bank, and I was trying to contact them several times. First, they didn't pick up the phone on the customer service. Then I couldn't get through on the keypad because all of it was in Portuguese. And then
sorry to laugh.
You need to take me seriously.
I'm trying.
It's a serious topic.
Okay.
And then thirdly, when I was trying to call the brands, they just told me that I had to call the head office because they couldn't help me.
In Portuguese? Sorry.
No, in English. So, okay. Can you take this serious?
I'm trying. Okay, go.
Thank you. So what I found was that I had to have a slightly different approach to it. So after we had found a place to live, I decided, okay, I need to be more strategic about how I'm approaching this. So essentially, I was thinking, okay, to choose a bank, the most important for us is that we are able to communicate with them. When you're in a country we don't speak the language, the most important is that we can speak to them. So I went on Google and Google Maps, and I just typed in bank, and I saw a list of banks and a list of phone numbers, and I started calling. And I called the first 4 of them, and it was either I couldn't find anyone who could speak English, didn't pick up, or they just weren't very helpful. On the 5th bank that I chose, they were able to, in the phone menu, I was able to press 9, I think, for English, and someone spoke fluent English, and was able to tell me what we had to bring to set up a bank account. We are going to make a separate video about that, so we will link that once we have made it. But comment write a comment if you're interested in that, and we will speed that up. But regarding the bank, it's very, very simple once you just find someone that you can speak to. So it really matters that you just find the brands where there's some nice people that are able to speak English to give you the comfort. I think that's the essential learning of it.
And on another sort of admin process with getting our health numbers as well, I would say that definitely our virtual assistant has been a lifesaver, because things were a little bit slow, and it's a little bit of a quiet town where we are. And the lady who was due to be helping us, the lady that worked in the local Centro da Saúde, she is on her own, and every time I would follow up with her, she would basically say, I'd write an email in my best Portuguese, and she would either wouldn't respond, but she did respond to our virtual assistant, and she said, oh, I'll do it next week. And then next week would come, it wouldn't happen. I'm on my own, I'm busy. And then it'd be the next week, and then it wouldn't happen. And then it would be a holiday. So we were waiting and waiting and waiting. So definitely, I mean, it's as you say, it's just about having the right attitude. And eventually we got our SNS numbers, and it was all fine. So I think just being kind of patient with it and making sure that you don't suffer by yourself, because you don't need to. There's always someone who can help you. You don't have to pay for expensive translation services. When I got here, I was Googling frantically for a translator, and I couldn't find anything. And what I realized is there are free translation services here, but when I tried to use that, the lines were always busy and no one would pick up. So our virtual, I can't recommend enough finding yourself a virtual assistant, because it saved us a lot of pain along the way.
Yeah, and also what is to say about the health number is also called SNS number. Is that because of if you are non-EU or if you are in this case as you're British, it had to get over SEF. We didn't have to contact them, but they had to check up with that we actually had the right to be here. We arrived before Brexit, so we had the full right to be here. But they still have a process of that; they have to check it. So I think if we didn't have that complication, it might have been a little bit
that's
easier.
True. Yeah.
That was at least one of the explanations.
Yeah, good point. So one of the things that we found a little bit frustrating, and when I say frustrating, I mean with a very small f, and with the caveat that these are first world problems. So this is not a complaint and we are dealing with it, but the whole property industry here in terms of renting and buying, because our plan was always to find an area, date the areas, rent somewhere for a year with a view to buying once we're sure where we want to be. So that was always the plan. And I will say that it was a little bit that the challenges that we've had were, I didn't expect them. I don't know about you, but I wasn't prepared for for the challenges.
We weren't prepared, but also there was just some surprises along the way.
Yeah.
That's probably the right way of saying it.
Yeah.
And the fact is that there's some differences between Portugal and the other countries we have lived in so far. For example, when you come into a property, many Portuguese properties unfortunately have problems with damp. So because it's so common, they don't. First of all, they don't disclose it in the in the property ad.
But they wouldn't, because then no one would go and see the property. And actually, it's to varying levels. So sometimes it's just something you can wipe off, and then sometimes it's a more serious problem that actually needs professional intervention, or a wall or knocking down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then we have been a great fan of using the property website Idealista, where the way of contacting them is usually by sending them a message and asking them to get back. And many of them don't get back. Many of them either don't get back, or sometimes when they do get back, they don't really know what property you're talking about, or maybe they're not able to speak English, or you just don't really. It's not really always straightforward to get in touch with the real estate agent, or even sometimes in worst case, we had a property we were interested in to buy. That I contacted in November, and I was already contacted in February.
Just a few months in between.
Yeah, I had forgotten I was interested. Let's say it that way. Let's be fair. But the matter of the fact is that you can't always accept how things necessarily work. So we found some tricks to deal with that.
One other thing that we found is that we'll contact the agent. They'll say, meet us in this location. So we're really excited. We're ready. We've chosen the location. We're happy with it. They'll say, meet us in this particular location. And we'll turn up and they'll say, it's 5 minutes from the property. And we'll be driving thinking, okay, 5 minutes have gone by, 10 minutes have gone by, 15 minutes, 20 minutes later. This is not even in the area that it says on the ad, and we haven't been told. And then we get to the property, it looks nothing like the pictures. And it's something we would never think about living, and it's nowhere near the area that was listed on the ad.
Yeah, and there will be cities that were more realistic to write in to describe it. Sometimes it's out of some small dirt roads where you need like off-road cars to drive on. In our worst experiences, and it's just areas where there wouldn't have been practically for us to live there, even if we liked the house, because it would have been too long commute time for us when we've already picked a school for our kids, and so it just wouldn't be realistic. And that is one unfortunate thing that we have learned. So we always ask for a location stamp and the actual address now, and make sure that is the same. And that has been our way to deal with it, so we don't end up in a situation where someone is trying to see if we are falling into being interested anyway, because that is highly frustrating when you're trying to find a house in a smaller area. Back to, if you can't get hold of the real estate business, you can first of all, if you look on the Idealista listing, and if the phone number starts with a 9, that's great. So after the country code plus 351, then if it starts with a 9, it means it's a mobile phone number. And then from our experiences, there's 80-90% chance that there's a WhatsApp connected to that. So you're able to send them a message straight away on WhatsApp. It doesn't always work to send normal text, also because that would be charged to foreign numbers. So if you have a foreign number, they won't be very interested in responding to that always. So contacting them via WhatsApp that way is usually good. If it is a landline number, there's one more trick. You can go ahead and Google the name of the real estate business, and sometimes on their website, somewhere in the bottom of the website, in the contact page, there will be a phone number starting with a 9, and then you can contact them that way through WhatsApp. And that is your easy way of getting like very quick responses from the real estate people. Just simply because they don't always respond super quickly to the leads they're getting from Idealista. So at least when you're messaging them straight on their phone, they know you're very interested, and that way you get a very good experience with the real estate agents.
That has been a great trick, actually.
It has.
I was very impressed when you did that, and noticed how quickly people started getting back to you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's good to craft quite a nice. You're really good at crafting like quite sweet messages, so they are, they do come back.
Yeah,
quickly.
well, how I do that is something like, hi, hey there, this is a lovely house that we would love to view. Please get in touch on WhatsApp, and then put my phone number in the actual comment on Idealista. And then I also put my full phone number in the actual form of Idealista, just in case there's anything wrong with getting my British numbers we've been using so far. Then at least they can see it in the comments as well, and they can just one click and then contact me. So it's an easy way of getting in touch, and it has definitely been successful so far.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I'm always cold, and
It must be your tropical blood.
yeah, that's what I always blame it on, you see. And one of the reasons why I love living here in this great weather, but it's not always 20 degrees as it is today. So we moved in September, so through what would you say, January time, it got quite cold. And so in our place, we have central heating, which, we kept on. We didn't overuse it, but we had it on regularly enough. So anyway, the thing that I want to talk about is the cost of heating. It's not cheap. Many of the properties here don't have central heating, so that's one thing you do need to think about. And they're not, a lot of the properties are not particularly well insulated, so you do need to have layers and blankets and things like that. But we're fortunate enough to have central heating. However, it is eye-wateringly expensive, okay? It is so expensive to pay for heating. Can I just say, our last few bills, we've had a few bills from our energy provider, which is
Galp.
Galp, yeah, that's it. Galp. And the first couple of months I was like, oh yeah, our utilities are not too expensive, a couple of bills that are around sort of 30 to 40 euros. And I'm thinking, this is great, really cheap energy bills. And then our last bill was almost 800 euros, and I nearly had a heart attack. So
Well, there's several things to say about that.
Yeah.
So, for example, central heating, for example, in UK or in Denmark for that matter, switches on and off. So because the isolation is fairly good in many properties, it warms it up to a temperature, and then it stops and takes a break. But because, at least in the property that we are living in at the moment, the isolation is not very good, so the central heating is on pretty much constant once you switch it on. So it can't keep to a temperature, and in that way it uses a lot of gas. So we knew that they were wrong, but it's one thing to look out for, because the initial bills that were low was because they were based on estimated readings when the property was empty before we moved into it. So that is what Galp continued on to. So one trick that we have learned is to get realistic energy bills now is to submit the readings monthly to your energy provider, so you get actual bills of your usage, and in that way you can correct if you're using too much heating and you want to readjust or buy an extra blanket. You will certainly be buying a lot of blankets for 800 euros.
Definitely. And we've asked our virtual assistant to actually get in contact with Galp and just to figure out what's happened and how we got this huge bill. And And you may find that Galp have, depending on who answers your call or responds to your message, you may find that they're helpful or not so helpful. In our case, they said they were going to look into it. However, the first response was, well, radiators are expensive, so turn them off. So that was the initial response we got, which is not particularly helpful, but they are looking into it for us.
And also what we have found out is that because we took over from our landlord that had the previous energy bills, is that the readings of when our new contract with the energy provider was made, they took it on based on the estimated readings from her bill and not the actual readings. So her final bill have probably been incorrect, but that now means that a part of our larger bill on 800 euros can be a previous usage that we're now addressing with Galp. But it's just something to bear in mind when you're setting up a new energy contract. Make sure the readings is the actual ones from the day you moved in. Personally, I always take pictures of all the meter readings the day we move in, so we know exactly how it was. So at least we get to pay eventually the correct amount of whatever it would cost to heat the place. And what is needed before you do that is that you have your NIF and a previous bill from your landlord or whoever have lived in the property, so you're able to find out what account it is, and so it's the right property that you're ending up paying the energy bill for. If you're interested to learn more about how we have how our journey have been about renting properties in Portugal so far, we're going to make a separate video about that, both on how you find it, how you get in touch with people, what to look out for, what to look out for in the contracts, and all those kind of things, deposits and prepayments and all those things.
Yeah.
If you're interested in that, please leave a comment below so we know how to prioritize creating that video.
I think what I like about being here is having seasons. So it's never too hot. You can still get out in all weather conditions. We've had a bit of rain, we've had colder days and warmer days, and I really like the fact that you can enjoy the outdoors in all conditions. The other thing we like is the cafe culture here. Now, there's a pastelarium on every corner, so that's a bakery, and I have put on a few pounds since being here. I think you have too.
and literally pastelariums is the easiest thing to find. So if you walk out on the street, it's the easiest. It's easier than finding fuel or food.
That's true.
You can always find a pastelarium, and there's always 3 or 4 or 5 of them within a few minutes walk.
Yeah, I love the fact that in Portugal the prioritization is pastelariums. I just love that, you can go in, have a coffee, have a cake or a sandwich, and you'll see people sitting outside on the terrace, and the owners and the people who work there, they're generally so friendly, and they'll help you with your Portuguese if you're trying. And I just love that sense of enjoying your day, having a lunch break, going out. And I love that the Portuguese people really value their personal time, and that's not what we've seen much of in London.
No, and that is also what, like, it's almost a boost of happiness and positivity, because it's just always filled with happy people that are enjoying their coffee or their cake.
Yeah.
And just to finish on the weather for a minute, what is different about Portugal on the Lisbon side, if you'll say so, up further up in the country, compared to, for example, the Spanish coast, the Mediterranean, is that because we are next to the Atlantic Ocean, we get depending on the weather conditions, but if the wind is coming from the Atlantic Ocean, it can be colder, and also you'll find periods where it's for example foggy in the morning. Just like I think today it was foggy up until maybe 11:30 in the morning, and look at now it's nice and bright and 22 degrees or something like that. So it's definitely a different weather culture compared to many of the other places we have lived, and that also applies even we live half an hour in the country from the coast.
Yeah.
One massive plus for us is that Portugal is very diverse. There's so many cultures mixed together, and the good thing that I enjoy very well is that they are very well integrated.
Yes.
Compared to the other countries where we have lived in. That is a very pleasant surprise for us compared to so many of the other locations that we have lived in, that it's so it's really like Portugal is almost representing the world of just a lot of different nice cultures brought together. living more or less the same way after how the Portuguese systems and Portuguese culture is built up. When we have also lived in countries like Spain, for example, coming to Portugal, which is just a neighbor of Spain, it's very nice to see how good they actually speak English here. The level of English is amazing for the country, and it's full. I find it fully on the level of countries like Denmark and Sweden, where I'm from, and I also think that I read that it was on top 5 of the non-English speaking countries in Europe.
Oh, wow.
That in terms of their level of knowledge of English. So that is a great surprise. And even people that are 50, 60 years old are still many times able to speak English, which is something that is, I think, better than Denmark at least.
Do you think? I don't know.
I actually do think.
Don't be worried when you leave some of the main touristy areas and you get out into the countryside. Don't be concerned if you're finding it challenging to communicate, because there's always a way to communicate with people. That there are people who don't speak much English, and actually it's not the fact that they can't speak English, but they feel a little bit shy, or they don't have the confidence. That's one thing we found here, and even when speaking to our son's teacher at school, before we had a Zoom parents meeting, and she actually said to me, "I'm really nervous about this meeting." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, because I'm not very confident that I can talk to you in English." And she did the entire meeting. We were talking for about an hour, and she was really good. And at the end, I complimented her English in Portuguese and said, "It's really good." And so sometimes it's not that it's not that they can't speak it, it's just that they need a bit of warming up, and they just don't feel confident, but they can, and it's so impressive.
So that's one other take on the Portuguese people. Don't give up. They always generally take things with a smile, and even if they say no, come back with your translate app and try again. We find a very big warmth in their Portuguese culture so far.
Yeah, in summary, we love it so far. What I would say is come here with the right expectations. It's not going to be, there will be some small frustrations, but have the right attitude about it. Get help if you need to. It's not expensive to get a virtual assistant or get someone to help you if you need to, and just enjoy the process. It's a beautiful country. There's problems everywhere in the world, but at the end of the day, these are problems that we feel that we've dealt with quite well, just because we're like, at the end of the day, even if someone takes a while to get back to us, even if we're having a moment where it's we all have bad days where we're just like, if only this didn't happen today. We're working and busy, but just deep breath and carry on and have a positive attitude.
Yeah, and also when you're moving to a new country, sometimes you react too quickly because you just want to deal with it, especially if you don't really understand what it is. Most of the times, things doesn't have to happen at that speed. You can take a minute to resolve the challenge, and then figure it out. So it's definitely a lot of just having the right mindset when you're coming to a country like Portugal, or generally when you're moving to a country where you don't speak the language. Just come with the right mindset. You are investing into trying to get to know it, and of course you have your challenges. But I definitely find I think Portugal is my 5th or my 6th country. So I definitely find probably Portugal to be the least frustrating country so far.
That's good. And in summary, we love it. It's in terms of our expectations, it's lived up to our expectations. A few small surprises, as we said, but nothing that we can't handle. And we plan on staying. We still plan on staying, and we still plan on being here long term and buying our home and taking you with us on the journey. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
See you in the next one.
Don't forget to subscribe. Now.